Welcome to today's Explainer. If you listen closely around 5 p.m., you can almost hear a collective groan echoing in living rooms all over the world the very second the word homework is mentioned. It's a universal struggle. So today, we're tackling that nightly battle of homework procrastination head on, and we're exploring exactly how to empower students to take charge of their own work. Let's dive right in.
We've got to start with this classic, honestly agonizing scenario. You tell your kid to go do their homework, and boom, they effortlessly deploy those 4 dreaded words. I'll do it later. And as a parent, your internal monologue just starts racing. You think, okay, sure, they'll do it later. But then 30 minutes go by. You ask if they've started. Not yet. The clock ticks from 7 to 7:30. Then it's 8 p.m. You start feeling that rising panic in your chest as the evening just slips away. And suddenly, it's bedtime, everybody's exhausted, and that homework hasn't even been touched. Found familiar? Oh, I bet it does. It's a completely relatable and, let's be real, incredibly frustrating cycle. But before we jump into the solutions, we need to talk about why fixing this actually matters. Because this isn't just about getting a math worksheet done by Tuesday morning. It's about preserving the parent-child relationship and, quite frankly, your own sanity. Constant nagging really chips away at connection. Today, we're going to explore a profound paradigm shift to solve this, using practical, actionable ways to help kids overcome this hurdle and bring some peace back to your evenings. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at uncovering the real cause, strategies to start small, time and distractions, stop fighting, start doing, and lastly, the ultimate goal, independence.
All right, Section 1, Uncovering the Real Cause.
So when a kid avoids their work, our absolute knee-jerk reaction is usually to assume they're just being lazy. We think they simply don't care. But as our source points out, procrastination is rarely a character flaw. It's actually almost always an emotional or a structural roadblock. The reality is that the task might be too difficult, fundamentally boring, or just entirely overwhelming. A lot of the time, kids simply do not know where to start, or they're harboring this genuine fear that they won't do the work correctly, so they avoid it completely to protect their ego. Recognizing that this is a roadblock and not laziness completely changes how we approach the entire conversation.
Since we're dealing with a roadblock, our source highlights a step-by-step approach. Step 1, simply ask what's stopping you from starting. Now, a quick tip on tone here. This needs to be asked with genuine curiosity, not frustration. You want this to sound like an offer of help, not an interrogation under a hot lamp. Are there too many questions? Are they just exhausted? Do they not understand the teacher's instructions? You really have to identify that specific roadblock, because if you don't, you end up treating the wrong problem entirely. I mean, you can't fix a math comprehension issue by threatening to take away TV time, right? You have to diagnose the root cause first and then treat the actual issue.
Moving right along, Section 2, Strategies to Start Small.
One of the biggest reasons kids procrastinate is just that a task feels way too big. Imagine someone telling you to go study an entire biology syllabus in one sitting. Your brain would just short-circuit. It feels incredibly overwhelming. But if we shift the goalpost and make it actionable, the whole dynamic changes. Breaking it down to starting with just one single topic for 20 minutes makes it digestible. Our text advises breaking tasks into these much smaller parts, because starting something tiny is significantly easier than tackling what feels impossible. Once they cross that first small hurdle, their confidence builds, and they can naturally roll right into the next task.
And that brings us to the absolute brilliance of the 5-minute rule. This is a fantastic psychological strategy for students dealing with the friction of just getting started. You basically tell yourself, I only need to work on this for 5 minutes. That's it. Step 1, open the book. Step 2, put the phone away. Step 3, set a timer for 5 minutes. And Step 4, just start. The psychology here is basically simple physics. An object at rest stays at rest, but an object in motion tends to stay in motion. Often, the absolute hardest part isn't the actual work. It's simply overcoming the friction of starting. Even if they genuinely stop after 5 minutes, hey, they've made progress. But usually, once they're in motion, continuing isn't nearly as hard as they built it up to be in their head.
A lot of students will tell you they'll study when they finally feel motivated. But listen, motivation is incredibly fickle. Think about our own adult lives for a second. If we waited until we felt motivated to do our taxes or fold the laundry, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. Successful habits are built on taking action, not waiting around for the perfect wave of motivation to miraculously strike. Kids really need to learn this early on. It's about developing that inner dialogue to say, I don't really feel like doing this right now, but I'm going to start anyway. You don't need to finish everything at once, you just need to begin.
Okay, let's get into Section 3, Time and Distractions. Let's be totally honest here, it is nearly impossible to concentrate when a phone is constantly buzzing. A student might sit down with the absolute best of intentions, but with a phone right next to them, failure is basically guaranteed. We have to acknowledge that these apps are literally engineered to be addictive. One notification pops up, they check WhatsApp, then it's Instagram, then TikTok, and suddenly 45 minutes are completely gone. Poof! So you have to put unnecessary devices away, turn off notifications, reduce those background distractions, and keep only what is actually needed nearby. A lot of the time, physical separation from the device is the only effective strategy. And parents shouldn't just yell at kids to get off their screens. We have to actively teach them how to create an environment where they can manage technology responsibly.
Now, along with managing digital distractions, we've got to manage time to fight off decision fatigue. Procrastination absolutely thrives when every afternoon is just this blank slate left to the last minute. When a kid has to decide exactly when to do their homework every single day, it wastes immense mental energy and it opens the door wide for negotiation. A predictable study routine solves this entirely. Say, 4 p.m. is for resting and eating, 5 p.m. is homework, 5:45 is a break, 6 p.m. for reading, and 7 p.m. is free time. While the exact schedule is obviously going to depend on your family, a predictable routine clearly signals that this is the designated time for schoolwork. It removes the need to negotiate, which stops procrastination before it even has a chance to start.
Sometimes kids put things off simply because they have a million things to do and zero clue what to tackle first. It all feels equally massive. This is where you can build some triage skills with them. Sit down together and physically sort tasks into buckets. Urgent and important tasks, like the homework due tomorrow, come first. Then, important but not urgent things, like an exam next week. And then, the less urgent tasks, like reading an extra chapter. Framing this as a collaborative skill really helps kids visually learn how to triage their workload. It allows them to tackle the most critical items first with a clear head instead of just anxiously jumping around from one activity to another.
That brings us to Section 4, Stop Fighting, Start Doing.
We really need to slow down for a second and emphasize just how important this next point is. If the kitchen table turns into a literal battleground every day at 5 p.m., the raised voices, the slamming books, the heavy sighs, the child's nervous system is eventually going to go into fight or flight mode just at the sight of a textbook. You are actively building deep negative associations with academics when every delay becomes a screaming match. If every session is an argument, studying equals conflict in their developing brain. We have to break that cycle to make sure learning remains a positive or at the very least a neutral experience.
So instead of constantly battling, you want to establish clear parameters ahead of time, and do this in a completely neutral moment. Tell them calmly, homework starts at 5 p.m., you have 45 minutes to work, then we'll take a break. Create those clear expectations, be unflinchingly consistent, stay totally calm, and apply reasonable consequences when necessary. And what's a reasonable consequence? It's calmly informing them they've lost their weekend screen time because the work wasn't done. That's opposed to an unreasonable, emotionally driven consequence where you just end up yelling. We want to avoid making every academic task a highly charged emotional battle.
Then, at the end of the week, try a collaborative review. Think of this like a sports team watching game tape on a Friday to see what worked on the field, rather than, say, an interrogation. Sit down and ask, what helped you get your work done this week, and what didn't? Maybe keeping the phone in another room actually worked beautifully. Or maybe studying right after school worked way better than waiting until after dinner. By asking these coaching questions, you're acting as a teammate. You're helping your child review their habits and uncover their very own best practices.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the ultimate goal, independence.
Let's zoom out for a second and remember why we're actually doing all of this. The goal isn't just surviving tonight's math worksheet. If parents are constantly controlling behavior, nagging, hovering, micromanaging every single pencil stroke, they're really just enforcing dependence. You won't be there to micromanage them in their college dorm room, and you definitely won't be there at their first job. The real goal is shifting from parental control to equipping the child with robust self-management skills. Ultimately, as a parent in this scenario, your main objective is to completely make yourself obsolete. You want them to gradually learn how to pilot the ship themselves.
I know what I need to do, and I know how to get started. Just take a second and let that sink in. That right there, that's the thesis statement of this entire explainer. That is the ultimate destination we are aiming for. It's the true definition of self-discipline. It represents total independence, and honestly, it is a vital life skill that they are going to rely on far, far beyond their school years.
So, to wrap up the core toolkit from today's explainer, don't just tell them to stop procrastinating. Actively teach them how to start.
This shifts the burden entirely from parental nagging over to actionable, bite-sized systems. Help them understand the task, break it down into manageable pieces, forcefully remove those digital distractions, create a predictable daily routine, prioritize their workload, start small using strategies like that 5-minute rule, and constantly track what works through calm reflection. These steps build a system that works predictably every single time.
I want to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. What task causes the most procrastination in your household? I challenge you to sit down tonight outside of normal homework hours and have a calm, collaborative conversation with your child about that exact task. Identify their specific roadblock together and just start small. Don't wait for motivation to magically appear. Take action, put the system in place, and watch that momentum build. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving forward.